Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, depending on where you are, and welcome to this training on agents, subjects, and classification records in ArchivesSpace. My name is Rachel Searcy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the accessioning archivist at New York University. And I'm joined today by my fellow trainer, Brittany. Brittany, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Brittany Newberry. I use she, her pronouns. I am the music and popular culture archivist at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia.
Awesome. So in advance of this training, you should have received an email with the agenda for the training with links to all the materials that you will need to participate in this workshop and to continue learning after the training is over. We may not stick to the agenda exactly, but we will take the planned break as close to that time as possible. So included in the course materials is a workbook that we'll be using in today's training. And you can test what you've learned today by using the workbook and by creating examples within your own ArchivesSpace instance or in the ArchivesSpace sandbox, which is available on our website. You can access the ArchivesSpace sandbox from the ArchivesSpace Getting Started website, which is linked at the bottom of your agenda. In addition to the course materials in the Google Drive, you've also been provided with a list of resources at the bottom of your agenda about using ArchivesSpace and ArchivesSpace membership that you may find useful. So these are our most frequently used resources, and they are good references to have on hand for the future. There is also a training evaluation and at the end of the agenda that we hope you will complete at the end of this training. So we are using Zoom Zoom webinar for this training, and your microphone and camera are both muted. If you'd like to ask questions, we ask that you please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. If you have a general question or need assistance, please reach out in the chat. Some questions may be read and answered live as we're doing the training. Others we may save for the dedicated Q&A section. We are using the latest version of ArchivesSpace for this training, which is version 3.3.1. If you're using an earlier version of ArchivesSpace, just please keep in mind that some of the features you see today may not be available at your home. We also won't be able to troubleshoot issues with your own local implementations of ArchivesSpace at your organization. But if you do have a question about your implementation, you can feel free to email archivespacehome@lyrasis.org. Also, keep in mind that this workshop assumes some prior experience with ArchivesSpace and familiarity with basic ArchivesSpace terminology, as well as an understanding of how to navigate the ArchivesSpace staff user interface. If you don't have this background, we recommend that you view a recording of a recent ArchivesSpace basics training, which is linked on the ArchivesSpace Getting Started webpage. So finally, before we get into it, please keep in mind that there are many participants in this workshop coming from a variety of institutions and experience levels. Remember that the ArchivesSpace Code of Conduct applies to all ArchivesSpace events, including virtual events like this one. Please remember to be considerate and respectful in your interactions with your fellow participants, Brittany and myself, and in the Q&A and the chat. So with all of that said, we will get started. So upon completing this workshop today, we hope you will have learned an understanding of the function of agent, subject, and classification records in the ArchivesSpace application, how to create agent and subject records in ArchivesSpace, how to edit agent and subject records in ArchivesSpace, how to merge agent records in ArchivesSpace, how to link agent and subject records to other record types in ArchivesSpace, how to create classifications in ArchivesSpace, and how to link records to classifications in ArchivesSpace. All right. So just before we get into agent records specifically, let's just do a little bit of authorities overview more broadly. So according to DAX, an archival authority record identifies and describes a personal, family, or corporate body associated with the body of archival materials, documents relationships between records creators, the records created by them, and or other resources about them, and may control the creation and use of access points in archival description. So ArchivesSpace automates the management of such authority information by providing a method to manage authority records, specifically in the form of agent, subject, and classification records in relation to one or more accession, resource, resource component, digital object, or digital object component records. So I'm actually just going to start sharing my screen. Okay. So generally speaking, there are three ways that you can use the authorities modules in ArchivesSpace to provide additional description about accessions, archival resources, and digital objects. And we will demo like all of these ways a little bit more later. So you can first link to a pre-existing authority record. So if an authority record already exists in your ArchivesSpace database, it can be linked to a new or existing accession, resource, digital object record. And individual authority records can be linked to 0, 1, or many records. The editing screens for records provides a linking option, and in the case of agent records, you are required to specify the role in which the authority record is linked. So whether it's a creator, the source of the materials, or as a subject. You can also establish a new authority. So if the authority does not exist in your database already, it can be created and then linked automatically from within the context of a specific accession, resource, digital object, etc. record. You can also use the create menu on the homepage, so create right here, to establish a new authority. So in addition to those methods, you can also import an external authority. You can do that through a plugin that Brittany will demonstrate to import authorities maintained by the Library of Congress name authorities file and also the Library of Congress subject headings file. So we will demo that later. And you can also import data via EAD files and MARC files, and I will show that as well. So let's get into agent records themselves. Agent records identify persons, families, or corporate entities that have a specified relationship to archival materials or to an activity such as an event or an assessment that involves archival materials. The agent record is also used for managing relationships among names. Agents are established and controlled separately from material descriptions in ArchivesSpace, and they are associated with material descriptions by linking. So they are their own records. As I mentioned before, agent records can be associated with accessions, resources, resource components, digital objects, and digital object components. And they can be linked through three primary relational modes. So I am going to bring up a resource record to show you what that means. So we will be looking at the Krispy Kreme Corporation records, which already has some data in here. And I'm just going to go down here to the agent section. You can scroll or you can use this left-hand navigation. And we see that there are three agent records linked to this resource record, and they show the different relational modes. So the first that you see is the creator, and that designates who has the primary responsibility for the material being described. Creator can encompass at varying levels in a multi-level description, the person, family, or corporate entity responsible for the provenance of the material being described or for the intellectual content of that same material. So here, the creator of the Krispy Kreme records is the Krispy Kreme Donut Corporation. The next relational mode is as a source. So this designates the immediate source of acquisition of the materials being described. So we can see that this person, Vernon Carver Rudolph, is the person who either donated or sold this collection. And this relator field is optional, and that's something that you could potentially decide to use locally or not if you wanted to specify kind of more about that source. So maybe you want to differentiate donors from sellers, for example, but that is completely optional. The last mode is when you use an agent record as a subject. So this indicates that the materials being described are topically about the named person, family, or corporate entity in some aspect. So in this case, we are saying that this collection is in some way about Dunkin' Donuts. They didn't create this collection, they didn't give us this collection, but they are featured so prominently that we want to call them out as being kind of, this collection is about them. And I just kind of want to spend a little bit time to clarify, like, you want to make sure when you do this that the record that you use for these entities is still an agent record, that you don't make them a subject record. You create them as an agent, and when you link them to a record, you specify the role as a subject. So I hope that makes sense. Agent records can be one of 4 types in ArchivesSpace. You can have personal names, and that's actually what we're going to spend most of our time with, is personal names, because that's what most people tend to use the most. But there are others. So there are also family records, corporate entities, and also software, which is a little bit of its own animal, so we won't spend a lot of time on it, but we do want to mention that it is there and available to you. Agent records are available to all repositories within an ArchivesSpace instance, unlike an accession or a resource or a digital object record, which are bound by the repository that they're in. So if your ArchivesSpace database has multiple repositories, like this one does, please note that your agent records, along with subject records and a few other record types, are shared across the entire your entire database. So that means that you can use them in each of those repositories. You don't have to create them anew. Agent records are designed to conform with the International Council on Archives International Standard Archival Authority Record for Corporate Bodies, Persons, and Families, ISAR-CPF. They are also designed to support output in the encoded archival state context, corporate bodies, persons, and families, EAC-CPF, data structure, and data structure and interchange standard, and the MARC XML format for authority data. If an authority record cannot be located and copied from an authority's database, agent records also accommodate the creation of names according to data content rules established in standards such as the Anglo-American Cataloging Rules, AACR2, Resource Description and Access, RDA, and DAX. ArchivesSpace users are encouraged to use DAX rules for forming names when creating agent records in ArchivesSpace. Excuse me. So I just wanted to mention that because, like, why should we care about our work being compliant with standards? And one of the reasons is for interoperability. If you are describing entities or your collections in multiple systems, so if, for example, you participate in SNAC or contribute to the name authority file, it can help you limit redoubling your work. Agents can be linked as creators, sources, and or subjects, which we all already covered. And just a quick note that agent records linked to accession records, resource component records, and digital object component records will not be exported in MARC XML records. And the same is true for subject records. So they only get exported in those instances when they're at the sort of like top level of the resource record itself. Also just wanted to mention briefly that each user has a corresponding agent record. So that is just something to be aware of. And that is definitely something that will come into play if you, for example, use the assessments module or if you use events. So now that we've talked a little bit about what agents are, let's talk about how you create and manage them. So each agent record for a person, family, corporate body, or piece of software is made up of 5 sections. And probably would help if I open one. So let's see. So those sections include basic information, record control information, identity information, description information, and relation information. And each of these sections contains several subrecords. Only 2 sections, the basic information and the identity information, can contain fields that are required in order to submit the new record to the database. All other sections and their subrecords are optional. And so this is really where local guidelines and local practice is going to come into play in terms of what you want to use and when you want to use it. And I'm actually going to open up a kind of a clean template so that we can kind of see all the fields a little bit better. When a template for a new agent record is first opened, those subrecords that contain required fields will be opened with all their fields exposed. So we can kind of see that the basic information is open here, and then the identity information is open here. And you can see which fields are required with these little red stars that indicates it is a required field, and you actually will not be able to save a record without information in those fields. You can also hover over the title of fields, and that will give you these tool tips that will give you a little bit more information of what specifically is supposed to go there. The optional subrecords may be opened and completed by clicking the add whatever button. So let's see, if we go up to the top, the add record ID or the add record info, this is how you can open these subrecords. And if you want to close them out, you just select this X and then confirm removal. A minimal agent record may be created by filling in only the required fields, and then you can always enhance that later by adding additional information in the other fields and subrecords. So the following fields are required for the 4 different types of agent records. For a person, you really only need the primary part of the name, and then the sort name will be filled in automatically, as well as you need the name order. The default value tends to be indirect, unless you want to change that. Family names need the family name themselves, and then it'll generate a sort name automatically. And corporate entities, you really only need the primary part of the name. Similarly, for a software, you really just need the software name. And just a quick note that if you are planning on creating a valid EACCPF or a MARC XML authority record, you will need to add more information to create that valid record. So I'm going to open up a record that has more information in it. So this is the personal name record for Tomi Arai, who is an artist. And I'm just going to go down to this name form section. So for personal names, the primary part of the name right here serves to separate the principal sorting element of the name from the remainder of the name, which is usually put in the rest of name section. Guidance on when to use additional fields that are available for an agent record should come from the subfields in an authority record for the name found in a national database such as the NACO authority file, or from a content standard like DAX, AACR2, or RDA. And then for family names, right there, family names, the family name field serves to hold the family name, and subfields in an existing authority record or rules in a content standard should guide you on putting additional information in these other fields. And then we will look at a corporate name. I find that it's kind of easier to see what all is available by viewing it in edit rather than view mode. So for corporate entities, the primary part of the name again holds the principal name by which the corporate entity is known. And then if you need to use subordinate names, you can do that here and use the authority file that you're working off of for guidance on how to enter those. So I mentioned a few times the sort name. So this is a data field that contains the complete concatenated version of the name containing all the individual elements provided in the authority record. This is the form of the name that will be shown within ArchivesSpace displays and is exported in reports and other standardized outputs. So ArchivesSpace automatically supplies the things like the commas and dashes. And let me go to one that has a little bit more information to help illustrate that. So we can see with Tomirai that we have these other kind of data points separated up here. And the sort name, which you see up here, brings that all together. So to create an agent record, you have a few different options. You can go to this create menu bar, scroll down to agent, and then select the agent type that you want to create. So I'm going to select a person. And you want to navigate to the name form section, because that's really kind of the critical information just in order to save the record. So I'm going to go down here and enter any of the information you wish, along with the critical information, but how much else you want is really up to you. But this is all I need to do at this point. But just as a point of comparison, so I'm creating this for Dolly Parton. And this is kind of small, so I'll make it bigger. This is her authority. This is her record in the Library of Congress name authority file. You can see there's quite a lot of information describing her. And, it's really up to me as an individual archivist, or me like as the institution I work in, to decide what else, if anything, we want to include from that authority in our ArchivesSpace record for her. But for right now, this is good enough for now. It's good enough to save in the system. So I am going to click Save Person, and then if I had wanted to create another agent record immediately after, I could have hit that +1 button that was right at the bottom. Sorry, I didn't show that to you at the time. So that is one way to create an agent record. The way we've done it here is that we now have this agent record for Dolly Parton. She is not linked to anything else in our ArchivesSpace instance. She's not linked to any resource records or anything. But I can also create agents from within the collection that I am working on. So, and that will automatically link them to that record. So I'm back in Krispy Kreme. And let's say that in the course of working on this collection, I have decided that there are more people I want to associate with this collection. And I can do that. So I'm in this agent links section. I can either click this add agent link button, or I can click this little plus sign, which is what I tend to do. I first need to specify the role. So again, whether this person is the creator of this collection, whether they are the source of the materials themselves, or whether they are just a subject of the collection, whether they are documented in this collection. So this is a subject. And I can specify more information about their relationship if I want to, but that is completely optional. So now I have 3 different, I'm going to save this question about publishing to the Q&A. So, but I see you. So I have 3 different options for how to link an agent record. I can either type ahead. So if I know or I'm checking to see if this person is already in our database, I can start typing ahead. So again, like Dolly Parton. So I already know she's here. So just by typing ahead, I can bring that up. I'm actually going to remove her because I don't think she's relevant here. I can also browse for someone. So maybe they didn't come up in the type ahead, but I kind of have a feeling they might be here. I can browse for them. So I can either like facet. So it's, a corporate entity, or I can do like a text search. So, just going back to Tomirai, maybe I'm thinking that person. So I can select them and say link to agents. I'm going to deselect Tomi. But I also can create a new agent record directly from this resource record. And that's what I'm going to do. So I select this triangle. I go down to create. And then again, it's prompting me to say, what kind of agent do you want to create? So I'm going to select a person. And again, I'm going to keep it pretty minimal for right now. We will go over what all these other things are in a little bit. And I am going to associate Ben Affleck, noted Dunkin' Donuts fan Ben Affleck, with these Krispy Kreme records, which is perhaps controversial, but I'm going to do it. So now I'm going to save the record. And not only have we created a new agent record for Ben Affleck, who is here, and if you wanted to, you can open up his agent record. But we've also automatically linked it to the resource record that we're working on. And you can see that here in this linked record section. So that is what I know I tend to do more often than not, because it kind of gets you that next step of automatically linking it. Okay. As I mentioned, within each section of an agent record, there are a number of options and subrecords available. So the agents module was expanded for version 3.0. So if you are working on a version below that, you are definitely going to see a lot more available to you in this training than you see at your own institution. So I'm going to go over more of those subrecords and options for you. And I think having just a blank form is maybe a little bit easier. So at the top, we have the basic information. And so this is used to indicate the agent type. So we can see this is a person, and also whether the agent is to be published or not. And that's done by this checkbox. And I know someone just asked about, should you publish as a general rule? The publish checkbox indicates whether, kind of 2 things, whether a record will show up and display in the public user interface, and whether it should be included in your export, so your EAD, your MARC, etc. I, in general, especially for agents, typically always have them set to publish, and that is a default that you can set within your system. But again, that is to a certain extent a local decision to make. Our next section is this record control information. So this is information about the agent record themselves. So not the agent or the entity, but the agent record. And that's with the expectation that it originated outside of ArchivesSpace or is going to be shared with a system other than ArchivesSpace. You can navigate this entire record just by scrolling, or I often find it easier to navigate on the left-hand side where you can kind of hop around a little bit better. And you can also, I think, get a better sense of like what the bigger chunks are, because I think sometimes some of this indentation isn't quite as significant as it might appear to be. Within the record control section, we have the option to record record identifiers, and that's a repeatable subrecord. Record info, again, information about the agent record itself as provided by the agency that created it. Other agency codes, about alternative codes for the agency or organization responsible for creating or maintaining the agent record. Convention declarations, information about the content standard used to formulate the record content. So either AACR2, RDA, DAX, etc. Maintenance history, about events associated with the creation and maintenance of the records. So maybe there was a major update or a revision or maybe deletion. Sources. So this is information on the sources used to formulate the content. So this might come into play and or be helpful maybe if you're either contributing to or getting information from like SNAC, for example, or the name authority file. This source field, I think, matches up with the 670 field in a name authority record. Alternate sets are for 2 or more authority records derived from different authority systems. So this is essentially a pointer to equivalent records in different systems. Like, you know, you have your Library of Congress name authority file, but then you also have something like VF or the union list of artist names. So this could potentially be useful in maybe a cooperative or a consortial context, or if you are describing the same entity in different languages. Next, we have our entity information. So this is kind of core information about the agent themselves, whereas our previous section was about the agent record. So entity IDs are about identifiers associated with the person, family, or corporate entity, as opposed to identifiers associated with the record. So this could be something like a Wikidata, entity, or maybe like a SNAC constellation. The name forms is, this is actually the section right here, which we've already seen because this is part of what's required. This is used to capture the authoritative form of the name as well as any variants. I am not going to go into kind of all the particularities of some of these other fields, like when you use a suffix, when you use a fuller form, you know, what you should do if, you know, you're creating a record for like royalty or someone who has a title, like there is just a vast universe of kind of cataloging rules for those kinds of instances. And there's a lot of good bibliographic and archival resources on that. So I won't be going into that, but that is where they live. Next, we have the dates of name use. So when an agent has used multiple names over their existence, you could use this to indicate when they go by this name as opposed to when they might be going by another name. Parallel names you can use to record parallel forms of a name in a different language, script, or a transliteration. So our next section is called description information, and it's sort of exactly what it sounds like, is to record further descriptive information about the agent, including controlled access terms. So dates of existence you can use to record birth and or death dates for people, or perhaps dates of activities in the cases of families, but especially corporate entities. Gender is used to describe the gender identity of persons or agents. I do want to mention though, right here, that I believe in the fall, the Program for Cooperative Cataloging did release a report with recommendations against including people's gender in their authority file, as well as guidance to remove them from existing ones. So this is absolutely a local decision to make, and it is functionality available to you. But I did want to mention, because there are increasing conversations about sort of the ethics of doing so, that you can read up on before you make that decision. I'm not going to go into all of these subrecords in detail, because they are relatively self-explanatory in terms of what they are recording. But just wanted to mention that for these, they do use controlled terms as opposed to sort of free text fields. So that's an example of what they look like. Notes, you can add a couple of different types of notes. The one that's I think is going to be the most common is this biographical or historical note. That could be really useful. And then there is this external documents field or subrecord that you can use to link to any external documentation that you might want to. So you might have a biographical file, reference works, maybe a donor supplied biography that they gave to you. So it's a very flexible field to kind of account for a lot of different eventualities. And then at the bottom, we have relation information. And this is used to indicate relationships to other agents or materials that might be held outside of ArchivesSpace. So this related external resources and archival materials related to the agent that you may not have, but might be elsewhere. And then you could potentially use this related agents field to specify relationships between different agents themselves. So here are the kind of examples of, like, they're in a family, there's a parent-child relationship. In the case of maybe a corporate entity, you might have sort of earlier or like predecessor entity. So that is also an option. Okay, so that is a quick run through of all of these different ways to describe entities. There is a lot here, and this expanded functionality, it's available, but you do not have to use all of it. Some things make sense in specific contexts and not others. So I hope that you don't feel like overwhelmed or that you have to record information in all of these sections. You do not. It's more that this is available to you if it makes sense. And now that you know, you can make informed decisions. So we are going to talk about how you link agent records. So we already kind of did an example of this, but we'll do it again. So let's see. Yes, I'm going to go back to our Krispy Kreme records. So in the context of a resource record, you can go down to your agent links section. And you know what, I'm actually realizing that we did this entirely, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but just to kind of recap, if you're in a resource or an accession or a digital object record, you can either use this plus button or add agent link to bring up this new subrecord. You're going to specify what their role is, and you can either type ahead, you can browse, or you can create a new. So those are your options. Okay. You do also have the option, if you would like to add a term or a subdivision after an agent record here. So again, completely optional, not something that often happens, but for example, if maybe I want to add like a genre form term here to clarify, I don't know, that this is like an oral history. I could absolutely do that by specifying it there. I think this is only available when you use an agent as a subject, as opposed to if they're a creator or a source. So to remove an agent link, it's actually pretty easy. So let's say I've either kind of like reflected and decided that it actually doesn't make sense to say this collection's about Ben Affleck anymore, or maybe we did a deaccession and that material is no longer part of the collection. I just want to click this X, and then I'm going to confirm that I do want to remove this link, and I'm going to save the record. Just to be clear, that does not delete Ben Affleck's agent record itself. It is still an agent record available in our database. It just means that it is no longer linked to this particular resource record. Okay, so we saw earlier like just how many options are available in the newly expanded agents module. And I do want to mention that in order to provide flexibility in working with agents, ArchivesSpace offers two different displays. So those are called full and light mode. So to view the full, all the fields, all the subrecords, that's what we call full mode, and that's what you see right here. But some users might prefer to view records in what is called light mode, which is more streamlined and more closely resembles the display that things were prior to version 3. It does include the most frequently used subrecords. So in order to do that, you have to be in edit mode. So I was in view before, and you don't see that little light mode button. But when I select edit, I see right here, it says light mode, and I can click that here, and you can see it immediately streamlines it and removes a lot of those options for me, but still has the information I need. I'm gonna deselect that. So a repository manager or someone with systems administrator permissions must first turn on the ability to view and work with agent records in full mode. I am signed in as an administrator right now. To do that, I go to manage groups, and I am just going to go to this advanced data entry users, and I want to make sure that, well, first that they create, update, and delete agent records, which they can. But let's say I also want this particular group to be able to work with agents in full mode. So I'm going to select that permission, and I'm going to save the group. But let's say I have another kind of category of people who I don't necessarily want to give them all of those options. I want to kind of keep a little tighter leash on that. So let's say for these folks, I still want them to create, update, and delete agent records, but I don't want them to have the full mode themselves. I'm going to keep that the way it is. And so just to kind of show you what that looks like, I'm going to kind of put on their account for a little bit, a little costume. And I'm going to go to create an agent and a person. And you can see that they're not given the whole thing. They still have a lot of fields to work with, but they do not have all of the subrecords available to them. And similarly, if we want to open up one that already exists, you can see that there's just not quite as much available to this person. So that's a local decision that you all can make for yourselves. And now I have to log back in as myself. So let's use this. Oh, okay. So yeah, that is edit and light mode, and you can kind of use those as you see fit. As I was preparing for this, I realized that there was a little bit of content that was not included in the workbook that we were planning to cover. So we are going to go over how to merge agent records, and I'll plan on getting that content into the workbook and sharing that out as soon as we can afterwards. So apologies in advance, but we are going to go over how to merge agent records. So this might be appropriate when you have two different records for the same agent, and you want to consolidate them. It can also be really helpful for like cleaning up data, or if you have merged maybe multiple databases into one ArchivesSpace instance, or just a number of other reasons that, you know, this thing happens. A quick note that merging agent records does involve the permanent deletion of one of your agent records. The records that had been linked to the one that you're going to delete, those will be linked to the record that you are merging into. But I do just want to be really explicit about that, because you cannot reverse the merge action. And then there's also been some enhancements to the merge feature along with that expansion of the agents module. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So let's, for example, we can see that I have two records for this same person for Rocky Chin. And that could be for a variety of reasons. In this case, this is actually an example from my home institution. We processed this collection, created a local name record for them, and then later, months later, I got NACO trained and I created a name authority record for this person following NACO guidelines. So, and it is now part of the authority file. But what I want to do is, one, I want to consolidate these so that there is only one entity record for Rocky Chin. And I also want to, I want it to be our current, like the name authority, but there is also information in the pre-existing one that I want to kind of make sure I don't lose. So to do that, you are going to open the record that you want to keep. This is in most of the documentation called the target record. So I have my target record open, the one that I want to keep, and you just want to kind of maybe confirm it, look through it, and then you're going to go to this merge button on this menu bar here. So you're going to say merge, and you can find the record that you want to merge into this two ways. You can either type ahead and it brings it up, but you could also browse for it depending on the record that you're looking for, or maybe how many kind of similar records. Like this might be a little bit easier. So you can go either way. So if you do the browse, you want to just put a check mark and then say link to agents. So then we are going to select merge. There's sort of multiple steps here. So we're going to select merge, and then you'll get a little dialog box that's going to explain to you sort of what is going to happen, that your kind of one of your records is going to be deleted, that any linked records are going to be relinked to your new target agent. And so we're going to click on this compare agents button. There are a number of places where you can kind of like stop or go back along the way. So the important thing to know here are these kind of titles at the top of the column. There says this record will be updated, and then on the right it says this record will be deleted. It's very helpful to have that kind of very clear. And you can see like the record that I'm going to update and keep is the one that has more information, has my more current information, but I'm also seeing, you know, on the right-hand side, potentially anything that I want to carry over. So this is a really simple example, but, you know, I don't want to, for example, carry over this name form on the right. I'm happy with what I have on the left. But I do want to scroll all the way down because because there is this very important external document that I want to make sure comes over in the merge. So I've done that review. I can select this merge preview button to kind of get a preview of what my new consolidated record is going to look like based on those selections. So, what I'm primarily looking for is, do we see this external documents? And we do. So select continue, which does not complete the merge yet. It's just kind of confirming that you've seen the preview. And once I've finished selecting the information and I feel good about my choices, I'm going to select merge. And now I'm seeing this message that says agent merged. And again, I'm just going to go down. There it is. Go down and just confirm my very important external document is in fact there. So that is the merge process. And then there's one more thing I wanted to mention before we head into the public user interface. And that is how you edit required fields to agent records. And I want to be mindful of time, but I think we're still good because we have about 20 minutes before our break. So fields within ArchivesSpace records that are required by ArchivesSpace to create and save a valid record are indicated by that red star that we saw earlier. So let me just bring it back up again. So yeah, this red star, and that's all that ArchivesSpace says you need by default. But if you are, for example, you're a repository manager or a system administrator, you have the permission ability to maybe make a local requirement. So maybe, for example, you want to require, I'm trying to think of a good example, like maybe you want to require that the rules, for example, always be a required field that people have to fill out. You can kind of enforce that in a systematic way, like specifically through the system, in the sense that it won't let you save the record without doing that. So again, if you have that permission, you can do that by going to the agents, like browse agents, and then this edit required fields section, and you can make it specific for the different agent types. So for person, you can, again, can specify like what is maybe your local requirement and you want to enforce it this way. So let's see, what do I maybe want to ask for? Yeah, let's say I always want a source. So I'm going to select that, click save. And then the next time I create one of these records, person record, I now see that there is a red star by the source. And so it won't let me save the record. Just going to create one for myself. So normally I just need this primary part of name, but if I try to save it without the source, hopefully it'll give me an error because I have said this is required and it's missing. So that is one way that you can kind of use the system to kind of enforce kind of your local practice. Okay, I'm just going to quick look at the chat. Okay. So now we are going to move on to using agent records in the public user interface. So I'm actually going to open that up here. Okay, so now we're in the PUI. So there are at least 3 ways to search and retrieve agent records in the PUI. One is to sort of browse by clicking names here. And then you have your search results, and then you have options on the right-hand side for filtering and faceting. You can also search by the creator. So if I'm looking for the Krispy Kreme record, I can enter a keyword in the search box, and I can even specify in the creator field. And so that brings me a result that is meaningful to me. You can also click on a link to an agent within the record itself. So I am within the Krispy Kreme records record in the PUI, and I'm in this creator section. I can actually just click on this again. So those are all different options for you. And so the last section of agent records, looks like we're good on time, is going to be on importing and exporting. So ArchivesSpace, excuse me, ArchivesSpace allows import of data from standardized agent records. So you can do that a few different ways. You can import an EAC CPF XML file to import the agent. And you can also import MARC files. And there are a few different options for that. You can import, the authority record itself as a MARC file, but you can also import agent and subject records from a MARC bibliographic record. So again, we will go over that in a second. The ArchivesSpace website provides documentation on import and export mappings. And this includes spreadsheets that show field mappings from like EAD to MARC XML in the ArchivesSpace database scheme, as well as CSV import mappings that allow you to import data. So in order to import, you are going to create a background job and then select import data. And you can get to that in a few different ways. So you can go to the create menu and go background job, and we want import data. So that is one way to get there. You can also go to the browse menu and go to browse background jobs. And then you can go up to this button in the right-hand corner that says create job, and then say import data that way. The third option is to go to this little gear icon in the upper right corner, select that, and then go to background jobs, and then create job, import data. So those are all available to you. It kind of depends on, where you are, what you're doing, and what makes the most sense. So let's go through one. To create a new import job, I'm going to create import just an authority record for a person. So from the maybe I'll just show you what I want to do is import the authority record for Marsha P. Johnson, sorry. And it is this one. So I've already downloaded that file and I want to import this into ArchivesSpace. So I am going to select the import type. It's an agent authority record. And then I don't need to include the maintenance events, but if you wanted to do that, you could select that little checkbox. And then I'm going to add the file here. I could add multiple files here. If I wanted to, I could just continue to select. And then I could always like delete, throw them out if I no longer want to do that. I tend to prefer to do it one at a time, just because in the off chance that there's an error, I just find it easier to figure out what happened, but you do you. So now you have your file here. You're going to select start job. And it's going to be assigned a background job number. So we can see that it's number 48. It thankfully didn't take long. So once it finishes, you'll see a little message that says your job has completed, and you'll be prompted to select this refresh page button. So that's what I'm going to do. You'll also see down here, there's a log that runs throughout your job that is basically kind of telling you what's happening. Some of these logs are more inscrutable than others. So I think some are more easily understood than others. So just something to know. So I'm going to refresh this page. And at the bottom now, I can see all the new records that were created. So we created, primarily what I wanted was this record for Marcia, but it also created these different subject headings that were entered as these 3XX fields. So it did that as well. And, you know, sometimes these imports run a little bit more smoothly than others. So you can see that there's some duplication that happened. That's okay. But now I can see that I have this really robust and complete record for Marcia P. Johnson that I did not have to create by hand. I was able to import it, and now it's available for me to use. So yeah, that is one of the import options. You can also import EAC CPF files through very much the same process. So again, I'm going to background jobs, import data, and here I have an EAC CPF file. So I'm gonna import a record for Kathleen Hanna that I downloaded from Snack. So we will see how that goes. So again, start job, it's queued, it's already running because, you know, this is the only thing happening in this instance. And again, here's my log down here. If there were errors, you would see them here. And you would also get a different message in red saying that your job failed. And so then you would have to kind of examine that log and try and decode that error message. But thankfully this went well. And again, I have my complete, and I now have a name record for Kathleen Hanna that I can reuse. So wanted to mention that as an option for how to get agent records into ArchivesSpace. Excuse me. There's one more that I want to mention, particularly because in my experience, often when we explain functionality, the kind of immediate next question we get is like, that is great. How do you do it in bulk? And there's not exactly a bulk upload function, but there is sort of a way that you can import a number of agents and or subjects together in a way that's pretty quick. One way is actually if you wanted to import an EAD file or a MARC bibliographic file and have those subject or agent records linked there. That is one option. You could even potentially kind of create a sort of like fake skeleton EAD record with all your agents and subjects. So that is something you could potentially do. But what I'm gonna share here is this third option called MARC XML bibliographic, subjects and agents only. So this is essentially, it's a MARC record for a collection, but it's not gonna create a resource record. It's only gonna take the agent and subject records that are part of that MARC record and create those in ArchivesSpace, if that makes any sense. So I am going to use, and I forgot to keep this open. I am going to use this, excuse all of my stuff on here. I'm going to use this MARC record for the Lydia Lunch records, which is a collection at NYU. Sorry, it's so small, but it is for the entire collection. But it does, sorry, it does have a number of agent records that are linked. It has a number of subjects. So I'm just going to use those as an example here. So again, so I've selected subjects and agents only. I'm going to say start job. And it's queued up and it's running. And seems like it went okay. And so now you can see down here, all of these subject records and, oh, it actually just looks like the subject records. So I'm not entirely sure why the agents didn't come in, but so apologies for that slightly confusing example, but that is something you might want to play around with. We have maybe about 7 minutes before the break. So I'm going to go through exports pretty quickly, but thankfully it's pretty straightforward. So ArchivesSpace also enables you to export agent records in a few different ways. So I'm going to go back to my now consolidated and merged Rocky Chin record, and I want to export it. Maybe I want to, I don't know, maybe I want to see if I can contribute it to Snack or something like that. So I can export that in a few different ways as either an EAC CPF record or a MARC XML authority record. So to do that, you want to navigate to the agent record that you want. And oops, that's not what I meant to do. That is what I meant to do. Just to clarify that you can do this export in either view or edit mode. And you want to go to this little menu ribbon at the top, and you're going to select the type of export that you want to use. So either an EAC CPF record or a MARC record. So I'm actually going to do both right now for fun. And I can open them up in an XML editor to look at them and confirm that they look the way I was hoping, that they're valid. So here's my EAC CPF record. And then here is my MARC authority record with all the different fields. It's a little small. So that is kind of so that's how you export records. Wanted to make just a quick mention about working with data in bulk, because that is often on people's minds. That the ArchivesSpace API provides a mechanism for working with data in bulk. I'm just going back here, including exporting data. Then there's documentation and information on the endpoints that you would have to use at the address that is in your workbook. So that is an option for you if you wanted to say, like, get me all of my agent records that have XYZ, parameters. So that's an option. Something else to kind of know that you can do is that you can also download a CSV file from a lot of your browsing or search results. So let's say I want to browse agents, and maybe I want to filter to just the personal names. I can go to this download CSV button, and I will get a CSV that I can use however I would like to. If it opens, there we go. It's always so small. Oops. So just wanted to mention that as like yet another opportunity or way that you can get data out of ArchivesSpace in addition to like the reports module that's available to you. Okay, 3 minutes. And I see that there's some questions in the chat, but I think maybe now is a good time for us to take our break. And we can return at 12:30, and then we'll do 10 minutes of Q&A on the agents module. So I will see you all back in let's say 17 minutes, because I know not everyone is on Eastern time like I am. Things we don't, and or things we don't need. Yeah, that's a good question. I've actually never had to do that, but my kind of initial inclination would be to open up that authority record, or in something like MarcEdit or a text editor, and just manually remove the things you don't want before importing. Because it is sort of, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, I think it's an all or nothing kind of thing. Unless, Brittany, you have other information.
No, it's
Okay.
generally all or nothing.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but yeah, that would be what I would do. Can you add as many entity IDs as record IDs? Yes, those are both repeatable, so you can add one or many of each. Use it to link to an agent's relevant URI. Yeah, but yes, you can absolutely do multiple for each. So I can actually just show you, I'm in my Rocky Chin record, and there are multiple record IDs from Library of Congress, from Wikidata. This one is being identified as being the primary, but if I wanted to, I could just select that make primary text to change that. And then I don't have data in here yet, but first, let me confirm that the same can happen here too. It doesn't look like there's a primary function, but you could reorder these if you wanted to by if you hover over these 3 gray lines, that gives you, and click on it, then you can kind of like drag and move it. So I could potentially like move this up here if I wanted to. So I hope that answers your question. I think I saw one in the chat from a little bit. Can you link to an agent but can you link an agent to a resource from the agent record view? No, I'm sorry, you cannot. Either you have to be in the record. It's like the agent, or sorry, you have to be in either the resource record, the accession record, the resource component, the digital object, or the digital object record that you want to link it to. You have to be in that, I guess, like kind of target record. You can't go in the other direction from the agent to the other way around. Okay, it's like we got through all the questions in the Q&A, and it looks like we're good in the chat, because I saw Brittany, you answered some of these questions as things were going on. So I think we are good. So I will turn it over to you, Brittany, for the next section.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, as a reminder, I'm Brittany Newberry. So for the rest of this workshop, we'll be going over subjects, then the LCNAF plugin, then classification. So we'll be creating those types of records. So I'm going to share my screen. So you should be seeing ArchivesSpace home screen. So first we're going to talk about agents. Oh, not agents, sorry. We've already talked about agents. First, we're going to talk about subject and how you create those and why you would use them in ArchivesSpace. So let's see. So subject records are used to control information about topics, geographic names, genre, and form, characteristics, occupations, functions, and uniform titles that serve as important access points to facilitate discovery of the materials being described. So they establish and control separately from resource descriptions in ArchivesSpace. So you can associate them with accession records, resource records, both their the main resource record and its components, and then digital objects and their components. So the terms that you use in subject records depend on the controlled vocabulary or the source that you are using. So you can use Library of Congress subject headings, or you can use Art and Architecture thesaurus, or you can just make them up on your own as a local source. And then you can output those, so export them in different formats such as EAD or Mark XML. So there are 10 subjects that you can create in ArchivesSpace. And you can create cultural context subjects, functions, genre/form, geographic terms, occupation, style/period, technique, temporal, topical, uniform title. And as mentioned before, people, so your agents can be, your agents, your family, your corporate names can be subjects in ArchivesSpace, but they are created through agent records, and then they are linked as subjects in the agent subrecord of your resource records. So let's get into making them. So when you're in ArchivesSpace and you're from the home page, you can create subjects in a few ways. So you can go to Create menu and click on Subject, and that will bring up a blank empty subject record, or you can say go to a resource record that you want to add a subject to. So we're going to go into this diary, into edit mode, and then while you're in it adding data, you can scroll to subjects. You'll see that some are already here, and you can click add subjects up here or add button here, and then you can browse or create from here. So you can create subjects and link from here to create that subject. So let's go back to the Create menu and click Subject. We're going to leave. So while you're in Create Subject, so subjects are fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of data that you add to them. Generally, the information that you provide is if it came from a specific source, such as Library of Congress, and has an authority ID, you can add that here, similar to agent records. You are required to add the source as well as the terms and type for the terms and subdivisions. That's all that's required in this, and they're usually easy to make. So let's say that we're creating a local source subject. So we'll choose local sources from our drop-down list. This is a controlled values list. So it's something that can be edited. And when you import subjects, it will be added to based on the source that's included in that import. So just keep that in mind. You can also add a scope note that will go over and explain what the subject is for, what it's meant by it, and that kind of thing. It's not required, but if you want to further explain what subjects are for, that's what you do. And then you add your terms and subdivisions. So the term is the subject name itself. So say we're adding a term for African American women. That is where that is, that's a subject. And then type is what type of subject is it? And we're going to say this is topical. If you want to continue, say it has the multiple subdivisions like photographs, dash, 20th century, you would add rather than add the dash here. You don't do that here. It will do it for you. So when you're in here, I don't know why that's up. There should be term under there. You will add another term. You can like add 20th century and choose the type and say it's geographical or topical, whatever type that term is. And you can keep going as far down as you need to. So once you're done, you just click Save Subject or +1 to keep creating more subjects. So we've saved the subject, it's been created. You'll see that up here, it gives us that full subject. So you have African American women, dash, 20th century. So that's the full subject there. Say you want to also add external documents, you have that ability to do such. And you can add metadata rights declarations to this as well. So you have those options. I do not use metadata rights declarations, but if you're interested in learning more about that and you're a member, you can go to the Help Center to learn more. But it's not something I use on a regular basis. External documents, similar to other external documents, subrecords, where you add a title and then a location, which is generally a URI, where you can find this information. So if you want to link to the Library of Congress subject headings permalink, you can do that here. So that is creating a subject term, fairly straightforward, not a lot to it. You'll see that there's no option to publish subjects. That's because once you create it, it publishes in the public user interface. Yeah, it just does it. You don't, even if it's not linked to anything, it will publish in there so people can see it as a subject term and then see that you don't have any collections associated with it. So it depends on you as an institution when you create subjects and how many people use in a collection. So we'll go into a collection to talk more about that. So let's go back to browse. We'll go into our resources. Yeah, we saved what we wanted to save in there. And let's just say that Krispy Kreme has stuff about African American women in it, and we're going to add that subject term to this collection. So we'll go down to subjects. You'll see that there's already 12 subjects in here, and you'll see that you're able to add more. So when you're adding already created ones, you can type ahead and see all the ones that here, like 20th century African American women, or you can browse. So when you're browsing, you can filter the text similar to what you do in other linked records. And that will filter it to the ones with that text, or you can filter by source. So, and term type. So it'll tell you what the first term is, and that's if it's like topical, occupation, that kind of thing. It will tell you how many there are for that, and you can select it and filter by that. And they're usually in alphabetical order based on the first letter of the term. So we'll go and select here. You can select multiple from the browse list to link to your record, so your resource records, all that. So we wanted to do this, we can, and click link to subjects, and all of them will appear. But if you're like, oh wait, I don't need those, you can delete them. But then you can also continue to type ahead and add more, just in one subject add. But once you're done, you can save, and it will save that subject to this, and it will be linked to this record. So when you're in, you'll see that when you're in like a resource record, you'll see that there's some resource records have a lot of subjects, some have fewer subjects. The amount of subjects you add to any type of record is really up to you as an institution, but these are considered access points, ways for people to find your collections. And they are searchable within the public user interface. So you want to keep that in mind when you're adding subjects. Are these terms series terms? So they'll already find it as a series name. Are they within notes and stuff like that? Is this an important term to have? If so, add it as a subject. One institution I worked for, we had a limit to the subjects just because it becomes overwhelming for people, especially when they're search based on subjects. They may go to that tab in the public user interface and see that there's thousands of subjects and just feel like there's far too much stuff. So we limited it to only so many, and we limited who can create ones, because people will just create subjects whenever. So it really depends on if you need it. And you should create it. But that's totally up to you as an institution to decide. But when you're looking at a subject record, you can view it in the public in ArchivesSpace, and you can see what's linked to it. So you can see the related records on the staff side, but you can also go to the public user interface. And when you're in the public user interface, people will see usually at the top here that they can browse based on subjects, and that will give you all the subjects across all repositories, because subjects like agents can be linked to records in different repositories. So you don't have to create them more than once. So you'll go in here, you'll see, oh, I want to look at Asian American art and see how many records are associated with that. And you'll see that there's one record here that is linked to Asian American art, and be able to use that collection and see what's in there related to your research. So that's one way, and that's usually how it shows up. And you'll be able to do that with most things within the public user interface. You'll be able to see the various collections. You can link to more than just resource records, as I said. You can also link to different parts of a resource record. So if you want to link based on the series, you can do that, and those will appear here as well. And then if you find that you need to edit, you can always use the staff only button to get back to edit this subject record in order to just, make, like, change it up. Oh, it's the wrong source. Oh, I need to add a subdivision. You can do that here. So yeah. So now we're going to move to using the LCNAF plugin and to import agents and subjects, because those are options. And this is the plugin that comes out of the box with ArchivesSpace. So when you're in ArchivesSpace and you want to just import from LC, so this is just for Library of Congress. So if you're using other sources, you'll have to find other ways to import or create. You'll have to either create the subject record or import using background jobs, because in background jobs and import data, you do have the option to import XML bibliographic subjects and agents only. As Rachel went over, that is a way to import multiple subjects at a time. But when you import resource records, accession records, digital object records, you usually, if they have subject records, like if you're importing the AD and that kind of thing, if it has subject records linked to it, they will come in and be imported and be available to use and be linked to that resource record or accession record that you imported. So you don't have to do that again. And when you're doing like bulk import of a resource record through the bulk import tool, you can add subjects that way as well. So there are multiple ways to import subject records. So when you're doing the LCNAF plugin tool, you will go to the gear button. You'll go down to plugins and you'll see that it says LCNAF import. You'll click on that. And then you'll be given the option to choose either LCNAF, which is the name authority files, or LCSH, which is Library of Congress subject headings. So we'll start with the name authority file. So we'll import that. And this is run through Library of Congress as a part of ArchivesSpace. So it gets serviced by them, and sometimes it's down, sometimes it's not working. So it really just depends. But I recommend testing it out in the sandbox and seeing if you like it and something that you want to use. Because as we mentioned before, if you're importing records, especially in this tool, you don't really have the option to not import everything that comes with it. You can do it the other way around, download the XML and edit it, and then import through import data background job. If you're just using this, you can't really edit it. So let's say we're going to, who do I want? We're going to import prints. So you'll do primary name, and it can be like their artist name, or rest of name for some reason doesn't work, but you can do someone's first and last name here. So you can do Smith, John, and search, and it will bring up all records associated with John Smith. So you'll do it in indirect order. Lots of John Smiths in the world, but you'll see all the records associated with it, and it'll usually show the first 10 results, and then you'll go to the next page. You can look at the records, and it will show you it in Mark XML, and you can read through that. You can also copy this and put it in an XML editor to get only what you want, and then import data through the XML edit, through XML import. But if you want this one, you can select it. You can select multiple to import. And if you don't want it anymore, like, oh, I don't want this John Smith, you can delete it from here. And if you're like, I don't want related subjects, you can say no. You can uncheck that. The default is to have it checked and to import the subjects related to name authority files. So that's another way to get around getting all the subjects associated with it, but you will get all the name information associated with it. So then you just click import. It will go through the job of creating it and take you to a background job. So you're in the queue, it's running the job. You can see what's happening down here, which for these, there's not a lot of data being shown. You'll refresh the page and you'll see that we have John Smith, John T. And you can click on that record to open it and view it. You can also edit from here to see. You'll see all the information associated with it, including record IDs, name forms, and anything else that came in. So since we didn't have any subjects, we didn't get any of that associated with it. So we didn't get any of the description information. We just got that, the name information. But you can edit this. You'll see that it didn't come in published. So you'll want to edit it and publish, which you can just do by saying publish all at the top. And that will change publish from false to true. So that has been changed. And then you can download it and export this information. And then you can view the publish on the public user interface side, which reindexing will take a moment. So if it's not there already, just give it a second and it will show up eventually. Let's go back to the LCNA plugin. So let's try prints and see how that works. So we have various princes, and is this the one I want? So you might have to look through all the Mark XML to be like, is this who I want? I don't know. Yep, you can see here, we have Minneapolis, and we have popular music, funk, rhythm and blues, and it's like, that's gotta be Prince. That's gotta be the artist formerly known as Prince. So you're gonna select it. And we're like, yes, we want subjects this time because we don't have these music subjects in there and we want those. So you're import and go to another background job. We'll refresh the page. And you see that we not only will be getting the Prince name authority agent record, we got all these subject records as well. And those have now been added to our ArchivesSpace instance. So if we go and look in Prince, we'll see that it's not published. We have all the data associated with it, all the sources, his various name forms, such as formerly known as Prince artist, and the dates of existence, places, occupations, which show up as subjects and can be linked to other records now as subjects, and all this other information associated with Prince. So now Prince is a part of your ArchivesSpace. And then just so we make sure he's seen and everyone's like Prince is in the archives, you'll just publish as true. So now let's go back in and add subjects another way by just importing them from Library of Congress. So when you're in the import tool, you'll change this from LCNAF to the Library of Congress subject headings. For some reason, when you're in this one, rest of name becomes available. I do not know why it's different. But in here you can, that's how you would do the subdivisions. Like if you know there's African-American women 20th century, you want that, you can do subdivisions that way with primary name, the first term, and rest of name as that second term. So we're gonna do African-American businesses. And see if anything interesting. Okay, so we get various things. Okay, see, we have African-American business enterprises, but we have African-American children's games show up for, which is a good record to know about. So we find this one, and this is what we want. We look at the record just to determine, to make sure it's what we need, and if there's anything else that will come with it. And you see it has different forms. I'm going to select it. This does not give you an option to not import certain things. It only allows you to import. You're only able to import everything. And then we go through a background job again. Let it run. See how it's going. Refresh the page. And we now have African-American business enterprises added as a subject in our ArchivesSpace, currently not linked to any records. You do see that there was no option to publish this. As I said before, these are already published once they're created and saved. But there is an option, if you already have it, you can always merge these into another record. So you choose what this will be a part of. So it's different from agents. You start with the record you want to not have anymore, that's not needed, and you merge it into, oh wait, no, similar to agents, apologies. Similar agents, you start with a record that is a target record and you merge it into that record. So you start with what you want to keep and then merge what's no longer needed into it. So the terminology can get to be a lot. So you do have an option to merge here. And then let's browse our subjects and just see how that is. So you can see from the browse list that we have several, over 100, close to 200 subjects in ArchivesSpace. So you can use this to look at various subjects and narrow them down and see what is in there already. You can also download the CSV of all of them to see what's already in your ArchivesSpace instance and use that when determining whether or not you need to create more, in case someone's duplicating them by mistake. They should be able to find them when they're browsing, but occasionally people make more. But that is subjects and the LCNAF plugin. Does anyone have any questions about either? Because I think we have time for questions. I'm a little ahead of time. Yeah, we should have about 10 minutes for questions. Okay. We do have a question about agents. We imported roughly 1,300 agent records that are not published. Can these be published in bulk? I think that's a possibility through the API, which is something you want to look into via ArchivesSpace website and the data information they offer through it. Rachel, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, we actually had that come up. I think it was maybe like something slightly changed in between, like an upgrade or something happened, and we noticed we had like a very large number of agent records unpublished. That is, we are locally hosted, so that is something that one of our developers changed in the SQL database for us, because we were like, we want all of our agents published. So they did that for us. But yeah, like Brittany mentioned, you probably through the API, something could be done. I did maybe want to mention that the sort of default publish or not is something that you can change in the repository or global preferences. Brittany, could you maybe show us that right now?
So when you're in ArchivesSpace, you'll next to your username, there's a drop down and it shows you different preferences to choose from. This has changed since I last looked at it.
I know they got rid of the user one and it threw me.
Yes. So so you can change your global preferences and then your the repository preferences, but then you can default for your repository specifically. And when you're in there, you can have published for generally everything, just checked. So I think, where is it at? Yeah, I think that's
It's
so up there.
At the top.
Yeah.
There.
So you can have published already checked up here. So it will be for everything that has a published check mark, not just agents. So that's something to keep in mind. And when you do that, you can just save it. And this will be a default for your whole repository. But you have to do that for each repository if you have more than one. And then there is global preferences that can be changed as well. And this is for the whole system, but I think it can be over. I have to read into this since they changed it, but you can also do it from there too. And this is for all repositories. But your repository defaults will override this. So if in repository default preferences, if that's not checked, then it won't do it for everyone. There's preferences are great, but I would check out the Help Center for more information on using preferences. Okay. Rachel, do you have anything else to add for that question?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Okay, thank you. So in the prints example, if you go back in before you click publish all, can you click edit and delete some of the occupation, geographic subject that way without manipulating XML file? That's a good question. So I think once you've imported the record, those subjects have been imported. So even if you delete them from that record before publishing it, because it's saved, it was already saved because it was imported, you're not going to be able to get rid of those subjects. You have to uncheck import related subjects or edit the XML outside of ArchivesSpace. So those are your options for those imports. And then to verify when you're editing the LCSH plugin record, did you edit the XML right there in the show field? So when you import it, only imports the edited record. No, you can't import in the records here. Let's just search. So if you're importing from this tool and you click show record, you can't edit this. This is just to help you determine if it's the record you want based on the mark XML. So you can't delete anything from this. It just allows you to copy it and then paste that in an XML editor. So you have to edit it outside of ArchivesSpace. Anything to add, Rachel?
Nope, all good.
Awesome. So we're doing well on time. So we're going to move on to classifications unless someone has any more questions about subjects or the LCNAF plugin. Okay. So let's talk about classifications. Classifications are something that, in my experience, doesn't get used a lot, but can be handy depending on your institution. So this is something you may want to discuss as an institution, whether or not you want to use it. So it's a way to group materials for browsing in the public interface as a supplement to your name authorities or your subject terms. Because as you can see, there can be a lot of subject terms in a collection or in your repository / instance. Like you can have thousands because you can be importing a lot or just adding a lot and creating a lot. You can also have a lot agent, and people may not want to browse through those, or they may get lost in the weeds just looking for what they're wanting to find in the public user interface. So classifications are another way to just group things within a repository. So they can, in a repository, you can use classifications to define and edit a browsing system, such as it can be based on a classification scheme. So you can use Library of Congress subject headings as the classification scheme and link records that way. You can create a system of meta collections or just a rudimentary function-based browsing mechanism. But if you're going to use classification, you should undertake 2 steps. So define the hierarchy, so your classification hierarchy, similar to how finding it has a hierarchy, and then link accession and resources records to that hierarchy. So you can create classifications from the create menu. I'm going to first show you one that we have already in the system. So go to classifications from browse. You'll see that we have this one here, and we're going to view it. So in this one, we just have a top level classification. So it has the identifier of Q and the title of LGBTQ+ collection. So by looking at this, you think this is the classification for all collections with on topics of LGBTQ. So that's pretty straightforward. And you'll see that has 2 linked resource records. So that way, when you're in the public user interface and you go to record groups, because that's how they are identified in the public user interface, and you see this, you'll be like, oh, okay, this is all the collections up on this topic, and you can look at them here. And you can click on these and search through them and that kind of thing. So it just allows you to do that. Too many tabs. So we're back in staff interface for classifications. So you can create them from the create menu and just click on classification. There are two things required when creating a classification: the identifier, which can be letters or numbers, and the title. The title is just, what is this classification about? Is it the subject term for art, 20th century art through LC subject heading? Is it the office of the presidents for your university? What is it? And this helps users know what this grouping is. So when they click on it, they know what kind of collections they're going to find. So when considering like creating classifications, think about them being used for creating a hierarchy for governmental records. So you have the mayor and you may have city council and various other things. Classifications do become public, that is a thing. So if you have government records, that might be helpful for people to see how that system works, the organizational system of it. It can be used for university records. So if you're in university archives and you collect all the university's records for records management and they become like public at a certain time, you can link those records. So you can start with, say, university governance, have the office of the president, office of the provost, college deans of different colleges, that kind of thing, and create that hierarchy. And they can be used for creating groups based on subject classifications, as I said. So you could do art and architecture, thesaurus, Library of Congress subject headings, and create that schema within here. And they can be used for just broad topics. At my institution at Georgia State, we have very specific collecting areas. I am the music and popular culture archivist. So I have specific collections that fall within my area. So we have a classification group for my collection. So everyone can find the collections that are part of music and popular culture. They can find the women's collections or Southern labor collections, that kind of thing. And it just helps them be able to go directly to that classification and record groups and be like, okay, here's all those collections. Let me see if any of them are I'm interested in. So if you have music, cartoons, Southern culture, labor, anything else, you could use those topics. And they can be, collections can be linked to that specific collecting area. So people can find all that's available, say on your Southern culture collection. So let's do one for university governments. So we're going to start with just saying that the identifier is one. This is the top of the university governance, and the classification will be university governance. And you don't have to link records to this top one, especially if you're using it to create the hierarchy and you don't have anything for overall university governance. But if you do like have a board of trustees and you want to add those records here, you can. But all you need is identifier and title, and click Save Classification. So we have now started our hierarchy, similar to when you're creating a resource record. You have this empty tree with just the top level record, and you have the ability to add a child. So it's like the finding aids, it has a parent-child relationship. So you can create children of the parent, siblings to those children, or children of those. So you can create grandchildren, that kind of thing. So we're going to add a child. So this will be a new classification. So we're going to say that this is 001, and this will start our office of the president. If you want, you can add a description. You can say these collections contain materials associated with the work of the university presidents. If I can spell. and you can go into more detail. So this is a free text field that you can add to. And you can also add, let me spell right. I have Grammarly turned on. That is not a function of ArchivesSpace. It's just something I have on my browser. You can also add a creator, and this would be generally you, like as a user, or the person who created the records, that kind of thing. So these can be created by the administrator, the university, you can add them as a creator, that kind of thing. So you can link agents to this, and that is an option that you have. And then you can add records to this. So if you have Office of the President records, you can do that here. You have the option to browse or type ahead. So you can't create resource records or accession records or anything you're adding to this. It's generally just resource and accession. You can't create them from here. They have to already be created in order to be linked to a classification. So we're just going to save that. If you save it, you'll just see the hierarchy and you'll stay on this. But if you put +1, it will add another record at the same level as the one above it. So this will be a sibling to the one above it. So we're going to add 002 Office of the Provost. And just continue our hierarchy in relation to university governance, and say under provost, you want to add a child, and you want to have the deans of the colleges. And we'll save that. So under each of these, you can link records. So you have records from the Office of the President. Those collection finding aids will be linked to them. And then you can do the same with deans of the colleges. And you can just continue to build out your hierarchy. And then when you are in the public interface and you go to record groups and you click on that record group, it will show you that hierarchy over here in subgroups. And you can click on each one to see the associated records. And if you add the description, it will be under that before you see the records associated with it. And so forth. So you're able to see these within public user interface because they get published after you've created them. They're similar to subjects. You don't have a public checkbox. So if we go back to staff only, we can see create another one, and we'll create another one with linked records. So we're going to label this L, and this will be topic based. This will be Latin American collection. Culture of Latin American. I cannot type today, but there you go. And then we'll add a record link. And so we'll type ahead and see what we can find. And then we'll also browse to see if there's others. You can only choose one at a time when browsing, but you do have the option to filter. Choose a record type, so resource to object or accession, and then you can also filter by creator. So let's see. That's what we want. Link to records. Add another one. So if you choose one and then you change it, you can change them. So we'll add that one again, and you can just keep adding. Until you know you've gotten all of them, and then you can always come back and edit this and add more as you get more records associated with this. So you can see we now have our classification for Latin American collections. So we go into the public interface, go to the record groups. You'll see we have one more classification. And you can see we have the description. We also have the 4 collections that have this is related to this topic. And we can go into them, search through them, see what they have related to research interests. So let's see. Is there anything else on that? No. So that's pretty much classifications. The classifications themselves, creating them is fairly easy. It's very straightforward. As I said, the records themselves that you are linking need to be created already. In order to link them, you can't create them from here. You can link however many you would like. At a certain point, it may slow down and you want to save so you don't lose anything. So I would add a few and then save and then go back into it and add more. The main issue with classifications is they don't get used a lot by institutions because not a lot of people know what they should use them for. They're generally associated with like governmental or university records, but they can be used for other things. Like I said before, just separating your, identifying your collections based on subject terms, either your local subject terms or a controlled vocabulary like LC subject heading. They can be grouped based on a person. Say that you have a lot of records in your collections about John Smith, and because his family gave you a lot of things, or you have a lot on the family or something like that, you can do a record group or a classification for that person and have all those records linked that way. Rather than doing an agent term, you don't have to go through all those fields. You can just have the classification, and that be something that people can find in ArchivesSpace. You can do it on broad topics, especially ones that don't have very specific subject terms, or you don't want to keep adding a subject term, or it's throughout the collection. You just want to have an easy to find place for people to find these collections. That's the way to do it. Yeah, so you have options when it comes to classifications, and it's really just up to you and your institution to determine if it's something you want to do, and then decide how you're going to do the hierarchy and everything before doing it. But you can always test it out in the sandbox and in your instance to see how it works. But remember, they're published once they're saved, so you can't unpublish them without deleting them. To say you don't want this anymore, you just go up here and click delete it, and then it's no longer a part of the instance, so they won't see it in the public user interface. But that means you also have to, if you're like, oh no, I wanted that, you have to go and recreate it again. But there's always that option to like test it out, delete, and come back, so you can create a test classification, especially if you have maybe a production server or a development server. Like try it out and always try the sandbox and see if you like it. But yeah. Does anyone have any questions about classification? Feel free to put them in the chat or Q&A. You can also ask questions about anything else we covered during this workshop. If you still have questions about agents, subjects, imports or exports.
Yeah, we definitely have time if you have questions or want us to go over anything again.
The hierarchical feature looks very useful when using classifications as subjects or subject records similarly hierarchical. They actually aren't. Subjects you only have the ability to add the term and its subdivisions and then just link it to a record. And that's really your only options with subjects. It doesn't give you that hierarchy to link multiple parts of it to different things. You can link subjects to the different archival objects. It doesn't have to just be the top part of a resource record. It can be linked to series and files and folders. But classification is really the only thing that gives you that hierarchy outside of a resource record and then the complex digital objects. Rachel, do you have anything to add?
No, the only thing I would maybe mention as like a little bit of a teaser is that there has been some chatter about potentially expanding the subjects module at some point in the next year or so to give it a little bit more like robustness in terms of like what can be in there. So I think there's a lot that could be on the table for that, but work has not yet begun on that, and there's no timeline on it right now.
Yeah, but if you want a more robust subject, I would definitely like reach out to ArchivesSpace and let them know. And then in the chat we have classifications is not the same as a collection number, but is a grouping name. So I can put all my railroad collections as railroad collections. Yes, yeah, you got that right. So if you're in classifications and you want to link all railroad collections, you can title it railroad collections and then search for all those in the record links. While I'm talking about this, let's just do it. So we're going to say R for railroad and then railroad collections. And then you can add a description and then add the record links for each collection or accession or digital object. The digital objects can be added as well. So say you have a bunch of railroad pictures, but they're not all in the same collection and you want those all linked and you have digital objects for them, you can do that here. So you have that option too. And then let's see. If an institution creates a subject term and a subdivision that is not an Library of Congress subject heading, standard heading, would this subject therefore always be sourced as local sources? Generally, yes. Local sources is just the catch-all for anything that does not fall under a controlled vocabulary like the Library of Congress subject headings, art and architecture thesaurus, and there's so many more. So I also recommend like just researching various vocabularies because there may be ones out there that you can use that aren't just local sources. But if you're in a pinch and just want this term in ArchivesSpace, you can choose local sources since sources is required. Rachel, do you have anything to add to that?
I feel like I did. Now I'm struggling. Oh, maybe just something to keep in mind is kind of following your last point. I know like locally when we were trying to figure out how best to implement a few alternate vocabularies, we did kind of toy around with the idea of like, well, maybe we have a local thesaurus, and maybe that's like our way forward. And that absolutely could be an option and maybe the best option for certain people, but we kind of quickly realized that like a lot of the terms that we were interested in did already exist in other vocabularies. So like specifically like homosaurus was one, and it made more sense to just use those other vocabularies that are being maintained and looked after by certain people, as opposed to trying to create some kind of local thesaurus that we would then be responsible for maintaining. So that's just, something to consider when thinking about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you've started creating local sources, like your own vocabulary, I would definitely document it so you have it for future people when you're not there. So another person has said that they're looking at the workbook and the images that the further into the workbook aren't appearing, and that you're trying to access it via Google Docs. It is a PDF, so that might be the issue. I have just looked at it either via my browser as a PDF or in like Adobe Acrobat, and that has shown all the images. So try it that way. And then our institution has access to the LCNAF plugin, but I haven't tried it yet. Based on the demo, does it also include access to LCSH? And it does, so you have options for either. So when you go the gear menu, plugins, LCNAF, import, you'll see the top one is LCNAF, and then the bottom one, when you choose that is LCSH. So that's the subjects, and the top is named. So just make sure you've chosen the right one when importing. And then, is there an easy way to identify duplicate subject headings / agents? Me personally, I'm not sure. I've downloaded the CSV and sorted them and did that way to identify duplicates. Rachel, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, yes and no. So I don't think there's a great way to do that within the system itself, aside from kind of one by one, record by record. I have definitely gotten a report of all of our agent records I've done it a few different ways. I've done the like built-in report, like the actual reports. I've also done an export from the database itself. And then, yeah, you can use like tools within Excel, can sometimes be really powerful for like sorting and conditional formatting. I've also like worked with that report or export, the CSV in OpenRefine. So to answer your question, is there an easy way to identify duplicates? I would say no, but there are some strategies that one could employ to identify duplicates.
Yeah, and if you are a part of the user listserv that ArchivesSpace offers for members, you can put your question out on that listserv, and someone may have a suggestion of what they've done, and so you could try their suggestion. But ArchivesSpace itself doesn't really offer it. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, we can finish early if you don't have any other questions. That is probably fine with Rachel and I. So yeah, take a look at the workbook, check out the links at the bottom with information on the Help Center and other things that are available to you. There are other trainings. There will probably be another one in the near future, but we appreciate your guys' time and for coming out and attending this workshop. Please give us your feedback. Let us know how we can improve. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.